Hello, welcome to this taster session in science communication. My name's Dr. Andy Ridway. I'm a senior lecturer in science communication at the University of the West of England over in the UK. But today I'm going to tell you a little bit about science communication as a field. And I teach on the Hong Kong School of Professional and Continuing Education Science Communication course. So what I will give you is a kind of a flavour of what that course covers and the sort of the impetus behind it as well. Just to give you a quick overview, we're going to look at what is science communication, which seems like a good place to start. Then we're going to look at why is it so important. And then we're going to start having a quick snapshot of the role of narrative in communicating science effectively. So really, this is just a very small taster of what you might expect should you enroll on that science communication course. So in terms of what science communication is, a really simple definition is that it's communication about science with people who don't have professional expertise in the field. So obviously we know about academic papers and presentations at academic conferences. Science communication isn't about that. It's really about all other forms of communication. So communicating science with people who aren't experts. This other definition covers a few other aspects and starts talking about the kind of the motivations behind science communication. So the use of appropriate skills, media, activities and dialogue to produce one or more of the following personal responses to science: awareness, enjoyment, interest, opinion forming and understanding. So really that sort of teases apart lots of the different reasons why science communication is just so important. Firstly, to raise people's awareness about science. In some instances, people may well enjoy hearing about that science and learning about science and the science around them, the science of the everyday and so on. It also helps people form opinions about science-related matters and helps them understand cutting-edge science as well. So lots of sort of motivations there. So leading on from that, science communication takes place in lots of different contexts. So the context that I'm most familiar with, because I spent most of my working life as a science journalist. So publication that I've shown here is New Scientist, which is based here in the UK, and it's aimed at people who have an interest in science, but maybe, in some instances they do, but maybe not necessarily work professionally in the field of science, and covers all of science just for people's enjoyment and interest. But there are also things like science museums, and obviously you have a science museum there in Hong Kong, and also science festivals organised in Hong Kong. It's organised by the Science Museum. And a good place where people can meet scientists, learn about the latest research, and learn about the world around them through the eyes of a scientist as well. So, other places, science on TV, science documentaries, and other TV programs. Also, science on stage, science stage shows have been produced, and science comedy. So lots of really inventive ways to tell stories and communicate science really effectively. But increasingly these days, science is being communicated online on websites and social media and places like YouTube. So ASAP Science that I've shown here is a YouTube channel with about 10.5 million subscribers. So huge following around the world. And it really is about popularizing science and explaining science really clearly. So at the heart of it, science communication. But these days there are science-related apps. Many research projects have their own presence online as well, where they kind of describe what they're doing. This one that I've shown you, you can probably see a photo of a dog there. This one is a really fascinating project that's looking at how dogs age. Although that's interesting in its own right, the impetus behind that project is really to understand more about how humans age, because dogs often share our same home environments, often have a same kind of kind of routine. So if we're physically active, our dogs tend to be physically active. So the idea is that learning more about how dogs age and the factors that influence it can actually improve our understanding of how we age and the factors influencing it as well. And they needed to recruit participants, and so they've got this really interesting online presence where they're explaining the insights that they're finding along the way. And finally, there's also citizen science. So this is where members of the public, citizens, are involved in scientific research. I've given you an example here that's very close to home for you. So in Hong Kong, citizen science that involved water monitoring, so looking at water quality. So quite often members of the public may get involved in collecting samples of things, whether it's air or water or something like that, counting things, observing things in the night sky. All of this is to help science and also helps people understand science and the way it's done. So a different form of science communication. And finally, as another form of science communication that you may well be familiar with, so this is science in film. So I've given an example here of The Martian. I don't know whether you've ever seen it, but it's a story set in the future. And there's a lot of, real life science within it, just in terms of the feasibility of growing crops on Mars and the gravity return system that's used, the gravity assist system that's used to sort of return a stranded astronaut back to Earth. And then another really nice example is Gattaca, set in the future in where genetic engineering is common, and someone's DNA is I suppose really the most significant factor that determines the social class. So it really looks at some challenges and some ethical questions that might be presented by what future science may enable. And this is in really popular films. So there are a lot of places where science seeps into our everyday life, where we learn about science and others learn about science. So it's really important to know how to do that effectively. And in terms of that importance, I think there's no doubt that during the coronavirus pandemic, we really saw the importance of being able to communicate effectively. The guidance that we were given about the effectiveness of face masks and social distancing and so on was all informed by research, all informed by science, and it was influencing people's behaviour and what we were able to do in our day-to-day lives. But there's also what's been described as an infodemic, an epidemic of information about virus-related material online, and this certainly happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that presents challenges because there may well be sort of misinformation within that. So it's a really important area of study, science communication, and the challenges that we're currently being presented with, such as misinformation online. And I've kind of touched upon this earlier, but as science develops, it enables new opportunities, many of which are really exciting. So, stem cell technology and CRISPR, which is a sort of advanced gene editing technique, and the ability to sort of enhance the human body over its current abilities, they're all within our hands, either now or in the very near future. And this all has implications, and we need to, as society, collectively decide how science and technology should be able to develop. So it's really important for people to be informed and well informed, clearly informed about science. So I mentioned around sort of misinformation and so on, and looking here in the UK, we have a challenge at the moment in that fewer children are being vaccinated for certain prevalent health conditions, and that's led to increase in conditions such as measles, which we have very effective vaccines for. But the challenge is that people are reading information and often misinformation online about vaccines, and that's presenting some difficulties. So, as I said here, never been a more important time to communicate science effectively. So at its heart, science communication is about kind of translating, in some respects, complex science, got here on the left, the research paper, and translating it into a form that's understood by those who aren't experts in a particular field. And often, within science communication, one of the key principles that we teach is how do you communicate with different audiences. So not just thinking broadly about the general public, thinking about specific subgroups within the general public, because that helps. But also, one of the key principles is how do you interest people? How do you engage people in science? And one of the biggest ways to do that, one of the most effective ways to do that, is through narrative. So obviously, when we think of narratives, we think of works of fiction and films and so on. But effectively, a narrative is your selection of aspects of a reality or fiction that you describe to someone and tell an engaging story with. And there are many ways that we can do that in science. And in fact, the good news is that science naturally lends itself to a narrative. It's a process that's followed, a process of discovery. Often there are real sort of hurdles that appear along the way, challenges, unexpected issues, and there may or may not be a resolution at the end. So our job as science communicators is to really kind of engage people through the narratives, through the stories that we tell. And often in those stories that we tell, there may well be some protagonists. So when we're communicating science, it may be scientists, the researchers in their quest to find a solution to a problem, or it could be the people who might benefit from that research, whether it's patients or someone else. There's often a challenge, a treatment that's a condition, a health condition that's prevalent, and yet there are no known cures or no effective treatments. And there are plot twists along the way and jeopardies. So, will a treatment be found quickly enough? Will there be money to fund this treatment or the research to find it? And will there be a resolution at the end of it? So narrative really does spill out of the way that research is done very often. And one of the things that I love about science communication is the ability to be creative. And what I don't mean by that is making things up. We need to communicate accurately, but equally being able to communicate creatively about research and how it's done. And that mixture of sort of science and creativity is really captivating. And often the ideas for those narratives come from interviews and speaking with researchers. And what I've spent a lot of my time doing is doing just that. And that's where you often get the inspiration for your narrative. What keeps them awake at night and getting up for work on a wet Thursday morning. What is it that really sort of empowers them and motivates them? Often this can be the makings of a really good narrative. So that's it. Quite a quick whistle-stop tour of science communication. Hopefully that's given you a really good flavour of what the field is about, the importance of it, and some principles and the importance of narrative. So just to mention briefly where I work, so at the University of the West of England, we have what's known as a science communication unit, which is a bunch of academics like myself who do research in science communication. And one of our current projects is Coalesce, which is where we're looking to try and integrate research into the way science is communicated more effectively. But we also run an MSc in science communication. It's a course that has run for over 20 years. We have a lot of international students on that. And it's a internationally renowned course. So it really is known around the world. And it has a real practical focus. That's what our course is known for. So that when our students leave that course, they're ready to start in a really interesting career in science communication. They have the skills in contemporary science communication, whether it's writing or filmmaking or sort of face-to-face public communication of science, whatever it is, we're able to sort of train our students in the necessary skills, all underpinned by kind of academic theory. So many of our students are coming to science communication for the first time, learning about the field, but many of them leave knowing exactly what they want to do and are able to get really successful careers. So it's just to mention that programme that's up and running now. So thank you for your time. Hopefully that sparks some interest, and hopefully I'll see you on one of our courses.